Hello, I am Rob.
And I'm Rob.
There has been news afoot about PlayStation 5 and what that's going to be.
Oh yeah, there's things afoot there, isn't there?
And one of the big wigs, not one of the small wigs, he's got a full wig, this guy, has said that the selling point behind the PlayStation 5 is going to sort of not so much forget, as put indie games to the back of the bus, make them secondary point and focus heavily or solely, or however we want to phrase it, on AAA games. So it's going to be appealing to the niche market of AAA games, which I don't think he knows what niche means, but bless him, we'll just assume that it means what he thinks it does.
Well, let's be clear. This is Sony's CEO Kenichiro Yoshida, and he's basically announced this at a strategy meeting, according to the Wall Street Journal. So when we're talking about this is news, we're talking about it coming from an extremely credible service. It's not simply somebody on the internet suddenly decided, look, I think he said this.
Yeah, we're not paraphrasing a Twitter post.
Prioritizing AAA games, that means games like The Last of Us Part 2,
Spider-Man,
God of War,
God
those
of
sorts
War,
of titles, the Final Fantasy games. And of those, I think the one that I'm most skeptical about being a game is Death Stranding. But that's a whole other discussion. But I don't understand this, because indie games... Okay, I kind of get it from the point of view that indie games were never really a big thing.
Well, I get it on the angle of system sellers. Indie games don't sell systems. You can get indie games pretty much anywhere and everywhere. There's few which... I mean, there's examples to the contrary. I mean, I was interested in Cuphead and alright on the Xbox, but that's not going to make me buy an Xbox.
Indie games were never really a big thing on the PlayStation, especially on the PlayStation 3 and 4. They've been there. People have had the option of getting them, and there's been some interesting PlayStation Plus indie games that we've been able to play. But they've never really been the focus. So really, I don't think anything's changed. I don't think they needed a big song and dance about...
I don't think it's as black and white as you say.
Well,
I'll be honest.
I think it kind of is, because really these days, and this is a topic we're going to cover in a different show, but really these days it's either indie or AAA.
Yeah, I mean, that is the core of the issue. I think video games as an industry is kind of broken, because you can just look up AAA on YouTube, on any service where you get your news, and none of it will be good. I'm not saying that indie games are inherently good, because there's a lot of things going on there which are very bad for the industry, just in the way that microtransactions are some of the really poisonous business tactics that are being used. However, making the games industry so black and white, that is bad for gaming. That is a regressive move for Sony.
But it's something that the industry has basically been doing for the last 5 years already. And Sony are just basically following what's already the trend at the moment. That's why I said I don't think anything's really changed. The thing that confused me about this, having looked through the article, the one thing that confused me about this is when you look at it from, say, the business perspective, right? Yeah, it makes perfect sense from a business perspective. The thing that doesn't make sense is announcing it.
Yeah, just on that, it's kind of a position of arrogance, I think, because Sony have this history of doing this. PlayStation 1, very successful. PlayStation 2, very successful. Sony got big-headed, and they're absolutely ballsed up PlayStation 3. It wasn't until like the later era of the PlayStation 3 where they pulled it together and they had like a position where they sold a comfortable amount to be able to compete with, or say that they beat Xbox. But this seems like Sony have gone a bit cocky again after success of PlayStation 4 and basically swatting the Xbox like a fly.
Look, there are several reasons for the success of the PlayStation 4, right? One of the biggest reasons, and this should be obvious to anyone who plays video games, one of the biggest reasons why the PlayStation 4 was successful is simply because people over in the East play the PlayStation.
Not as much. They don't play the games in the East like they used to. I mean, console gaming in the East is kind of old hat. It's mobile gaming, which is the big thing over there.
No, it's mobile gaming, esports, and PC gaming at
Console
the moment.
gaming in the East
Right?
isn't really
Those
a
are the big
thing
things.
anymore.
No, it is still a thing. That's my point. If people are going to console game in the East, they don't go for the Xbox, and that's my point. That's one of been Sony's mainstays. That's one of the reasons why, and it's the main reason why Nintendo have historically their roots being in the East. They basically made headway in the East and basically figured out what will work and what hasn't. And then they spread their tentacles around the world and engulfed us in their Cthulhu-like essence.
That sounds like a new deodorant, Cthulhu Essence.
Andrew would wear it. We know
Yes,
that.
many people would wear it, but it's just so diverse. World video gaming. I will constantly talk about the credit and the validity and how much it enriches the video game industry to have games of all sort of budgets represented. And the idea of a AAA game, divorce it from like all the bad business practices and the poisonous business practices, and they're valuing the market and their productivity and their profitability above all else. Take that out of the equation. What AAA game is a big budget, expensive game. The sort of market where I think the later Resident Evils were classed as a failure despite selling 4 million copies.
Yeah. See, this it was the same for Final Fantasy as well. Remember, Square actually said which Final Fantasy was it? I've forgotten. Was a failure because it sold a certain number of copies, and you're like, well, you sold like that many million copies.
Yeah,
how was that a failure?
It's bad for the industry, really. It's not. It's a byproduct of the video games becoming an industry, whereas before you could say it was an industry, but it wasn't like the biggest industry on the planet, and games weren't turning over games publishers weren't turning over £1 billion profits.
Yeah, here's the thing, right? I know that we're probably going over some topics we've got, or some ground that we've covered in other shows and in in other topics, but one of the things I can't get away from is if Sony is going to focus so much on AAA games, okay, disregarding whether they need to announce it or not, that doesn't mean to say that they're not going to have any indie games on, on the PlayStation 5. That just means their focus will be on AAA games. So the ones that they're heavily going to push are going to be AAA games. Indie games, basically, they're saying fend for yourself,
which has always been the case, though, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's all. That's why I said I don't think anything's going to change, right? The thing that bugs me about the focus, about the drive to push forward the AAA games, is the fact that the majority of AAA games that get released incomplete, which automatically violates the consumer contract that you have with the publisher because you are paying for a product and you expect that product to be complete. And this is what I don't understand about the video game audience. Video game playing audience are happy to buy incomplete AAA titles.
I wouldn't say happy.
But that's the thing. They are. They don't complain about it in the.
Oh, they do, Rob.
They complain about it on the internet.
Yeah, but there's the thing. They complain, but they still buy it.
Yeah, they don't vote with their wallet, do they?
No. I think the issue here is it's purely a sort of gamer happiness. It's based on gamer happiness. The premise of a AAA game is an extremely big budget game, which takes a lot of time to produce. And so the very idea of them is, I mean, let's say a production cycle for that is 2 years, which means you're not going to get an awful lot of games. That's basically what I'm coming around to saying at the end of the day. They're basically admitting from the off that they're going to be putting a lot of their stock not in I know it's quality over quantity, but at the same time, quantity is a games market has a lot of things going on. Means a lot more things can happen. Whereas if you openly admit from the off that you're putting all your stock in these big budget, slow production cycles in your gaming output, you're basically taking the sense of adventure that you get with games. Because with games, you buy things, you take risk on things. You don't buy it because that's all there is. You take chance on games, and it's a very solid business practice to do that, to eliminate all risk. But on an entertainment medium, and when an entertainment medium eliminates all risk, I believe it's very bad for the future of development of what games can be and what games can strive towards in the future.
Yeah, but that's why we need the indie games to be pushed to the front more. It's that simple. The indie games are the part that takes the risk. The AAA games don't really want to. They tend to lose too much money.
Yeah.
They have investors. They have royalty checks to write, stuff like that. I hate to be callous about it, but it's a business. They're there to make money.
Yeah. I mean, that is the most obvious thing. I mean, obviously it's a business, and obviously they need to make money, but at the same time, I believe they could be a bit more hands-on with the indie stuff. And not sort of say, they're there, the present, they're fine, we'll blah, blah, blah.
Another sad thing, right?
Before you get that, all I'm basically saying is, Steam is a thing, and Steam has no quality control, and towards this era of the PlayStation 4, there is no quality control there. So if they took more of an ownership over their storefront, that'd be good, I think.
Yeah, I suppose, but I mean, the problem with Steam is that, yeah, it's a bit of a Wild West on Steam. There's a lot of stuff on Steam that, yeah,
like I said, Valve just don't care.
Kind of the same thing as what's on PSN. At least Sony have a certain modicum of ownership on PSN, whereas Valve.
No, they don't, Rob. No, they don't.
There's some stuff on PSN that shouldn't be there. I agree, but
there's some stuff on PSN which, pardon my language, but it's utterly repugnant.
But all I'm saying is, there's so much more of that on Steam than there is on PSN, and I've seen plenty of articles relating to stuff that was repugnant that somehow made it onto PSN and was quickly taken down.
Yeah, I mean, all I'm basically getting at is, it's fine having the AAA, but richness of a market, a richness of a console comes from variation and different things. And if you want richness, you have to also have some sort of inclination towards quality. I'm not saying all games like 10 out of 10 perfect masterpieces. I'm just saying have some sort of quality control on PSN. And having that on PlayStation 5 will...
Yeah, but that then begs the question, and I hate to play devil's advocate for Sony, because, to be honest, although I do use the PlayStation 4 a lot, I'm not really the biggest fan of corporate Sony, but I have to play devil's advocate in this case. That does bring up the question, who's responsible for actually the games themselves? It's the developers, it's the publishers. Sony has no ownership over those titles, over those IPs.
No, but they have like a carte blanche over what they want on their platform.
Yeah, and if it's a AAA game, even if it features repugnant stuff, I mean, Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah, the business practices of Rockstar, that's not something, if I was like a company which cared for my clientele and cared for the people who worked under my umbrella, that'd be the sort of thing to be cracked down on. But again, that's another issue for another day.
That's the only point I'm making. There's two sides to that argument. There's the developers and publishers, and there's also Sony themselves, who are making a new platform for games. And the same could be said about the other companies as well. Nintendo, Microsoft, whoever else makes a console, even Google's Stadia thing.
It's an interesting time, and it's just a weird way that they've decided to frame their next console generation.
Yeah, it is, because it's an announcement that, number one, didn't need to be made because it's what they're already doing, right? And number two, is there a number two?
Number two is just lacking vision, I think. That's my correlation. It just lacks vision.
That's the story of Sony since the beginning of the PlayStation 3.
Yeah.
Sony, with the PlayStation 5, that'll be a total of 3 generations of console where Sony have basically just done the same thing, just with newer hardware. That's it.
And that is a very good segue, or a good ending point, really, because we will be picking that talking point up
Yep.
in the next episode. Okay, and that's it. But if you have something to add to the discussion, do comment below, and don't forget to subscribe and kick the beep out of that bell. That's right, I'm censoring myself. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.